right, let's go. All right, it is July 2nd, 2024. This marks American Aboriginal Independence Day, and I just want to close the day out with Declaration of Decolonization of America, better known as Turtle Island, and to also declare the independence of the descendants of the original Indigenous people. So before I get to the presentation, I just want to get started.
I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you're so cold. It's only one Super Sunday at the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you're so cold. It's only one for Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. Mardi Gras, walking in the street like I run the town. Don't your horn, ain't me to move, drive around. We out and tell him he ain't have enough. On, I told the engine, he look naked. I'm a whole park legend. We outside. I was making cars stop at the beach shop. At the liquor store, I tell him who could go. We outside. While we walk across the city, we gon' meet them all. Them up engines, they be hopping out of U-Haul. We outside. You a U-Haul engine, U-Haul engine. And I'm an old school engine walking across the city. You a U-Haul engine, U-Haul engine. And I'm an old school engine walking across the city. I'm buying feathers by the dozen just to play the dozens. Telling engines stare at me, they need to study. We outside. I shoot shot, I think that's what my chief say. I'm walking the street, painted like Sting, painted like E Honda. Don't let me get behind you, coming with a cloud of ganja. I pass the St. Thomas, walking to South Liberty. I told the engine I'm too pretty for you to be ribbing me. St. Joseph night, no killing me. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about boys. Oh, it's only one Super Sunday. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about boy, it's so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. Walking through the smoke of the couches. Everybody come see me mad like I'm a Jabberwocky. It ain't no competition, it ain't. For them engines, how they dead on the put. They say I do the most. I got the stones on my gloves like Thanos. Walking pillow. You know what make me happy? When I be walking with a hatchet in third wall looking for Apaches. It's a sight to see, flag boy across the magazine. Full magazine, she say tell a spy ball to the mouth of me. Any is causing trouble, it's a killing spree. We got two engines running double in the third team. It's like I turn the stubble where they stand at my feet. Second and deep. See when you see him with a bucket, boy they told down. Just know when Carnival come round us when they go down. I was so hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you're so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was sewing, hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. Carnival in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about, boy, you're so cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. suit cold. There's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl. I was somewhere hustling, working for the Mardi Gras. On the boat in New Orleans, I'm outside. Everybody talking about boy, your suit cold. It's only one Super Sunday, it ain't the Super Bowl.
Hey, okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get into this declaration. Like I said, I just want to close the night out. I just wanted to play it for everyone to hear. It was already played yesterday. Start off with the declaration. I want to end the night with it. Okay, peace.
The listening family. I have a project that I've been working on with everything else that's been going on with us, and I have intentions of making a global international notice, and it's a declaration of decolonization of the landmass formerly known as Turtle Island, and I'd like to read a lot of that to you all.
Absolutely, sis.
So-called Christopher Columbus was sanctioned by the Catholic Church, the Vatican, to conquer lands that did not belong to them. He and his conquistadors tortured, raped, murdered, and ate the people they found on those lands. Today, their descendants continue to commit various acts of genocide against the indigenous people of those lands. Their laws, history, educational systems, sciences, and medicines are further used to supplant the identity of the indigenous heirs to the land. We are the indigenous heirs whose history and inheritance United States of America, the United States for America, its international parties or allies are hereby confiscated and reclaimed by the indigenous people, citing the post-millennium is a law, and I'll give you
All right, so StreamYard kicked me out. I'm gonna try this again.
various acts of genocide against the indigenous people of those lands. Their laws, history, educational systems, sciences, and medicines are further used to supplant the identity of the indigenous heirs to the land. We are the indigenous heirs whose history and inheritance is tied to these lands and proclaim the following. All land, resources, property, movable and unmovable, thought to belong to the Catholic Church, the Vatican, doing business as the United States with the capital U and United, United States with the small u, The United States of America, the United States for are hereby confiscated and reclaimed by the indigenous people, citing the law of Maat and post-limenium. Post-limenium is a law, and I'll give you the legal definition. It means after threshold. Threshold, the other definition for it is beginning. It is a Roman legal doctrine whereby those captured by an enemy are regarded as having died free men before capture to protect those claiming under them, and whereby their return to the jurisdiction of Rome, the captives regain their suspended property and civil rights. The right or rule of international law, under which when persons or things taken by an enemy in war come again under the control of their own state, they, as a general rule, regain the rights belonging or relating to them before capture. The right by which persons and things taken into war are restored to their former status when coming again under the power of the nation to which they belong. That was first recorded in 1650. Land. By land, we mean the term land, which includes all physical elements in the wealth of a nation bestowed by nature, such as climate, environment, fields, forests, minerals, mountains, lakes, streams, seas, and animals. As an asset, it includes anything on the ground, such as buildings, crops, fences, trees, water, above the ground, air, and space rights, and under the ground, mineral rights down to the center of the earth. The precious metals refers to the classification of metals that are considered to be rare and have a high economic value. These include, but are not limited to gold, silver, platinum, iridium, rhodium, and precious stone, ruby, and sapphire. Capital are human used as capital in stock, bonds, certificates, and banking schemes are all free for self-determination. Repossession becomes a necessity, and it is a self-help type action. Takes the property back from the party who took possession of it, whether agreed, implied, or usurped, without invoking court proceedings. And as a note, courts cannot rule nor make judgments when they lack jurisdiction. Therefore, it becomes necessary to forfeit to the United States, the states, cities, and municipalities, and repeal all U.S. federal government allotted land agreements, historically known as alienated land, allotted land of Indian country. We, the indigenous people, demand restoration of treaty-guaranteed land, as well as monetary compensation. We demand restoration, restitution, or repatriation of lands acquired by the United States outside of valid treaties. Also be advised that no monetary amount can compensate for lands illegally seized, particularly those lands necessary for indigenous people to regain sacred coherence. We demand accounting for monies given in settlement to groups falsely claiming to be descendants of the original indigenous people, descendants of so-called $5 Indians. We, the indigenous descendants, demand the return of all land, waterways, railroads, roads, buildings, etc., all properties illegally taken from our people who are prisoners of war. The United States government ignored the existence of indigenous people on their own land and treated our land as a land free to colonize. The United States government stole the identities of the indigenous people by labeling them Negro, Black, Colored, Mulatto, African American, which left them a landless people, war prisoners with identity theft. White half-caste $5 Indians were encouraged to assimilate to the various indigenous communities and also the so-called white communities. Members of some Native American tribes have and continually receive cash payouts from gaming revenues, some as much as $30,000 a month from casino earnings. Casinos built on our stolen land. The dog's final rolls allowed so-called white people to bribe government officials. They were referred to as $5 Indians in order to unlawfully obtain land allotments, land stolen, taken from the indigenous members of many tribes. Many indigenous people have been enabled to trace their ancestry because the U.S. government has allowed identity thieves to falsely claim their heritage and to destroy documentation from the rightful heirs. The United States government has illegally and unlawfully sold off and stolen and taken from the original indigenous people, prisoners of war, to other foreign countries and corporations. As part of such actions, a Chinese company now owns 146,000 acres of prime farmland since 2013. There are many reservations located in these United States with millions of acres of trust lands which are leased for farming, grazing, oil and gas and other mineral extraction. Yet the descendants of the rightful inheritors do not live on these reservations nor share in any profits from these leased lands. We will not purchase any land because the land was never ceded to the United States. The land, along with many, many family relics and treasures, are being held in trust. We declare our independence. It's not a cessation, but a lawful, unilateral withdrawal from treaty obligations permitted under the 1969 Vienna Conference of the Convention as the Law of Treaties. We are not citizens of the USA. We offer citizenship to anyone who renounces their U.S. citizenship. U.S. colonial rule is at an end. The territory of the Republic of Indigenous Americans will include and encompass all the land stolen and held in trust by the U.S. government. This is the manifesto representing the wisdom of thousands of people, the ancestors and the great mystery, the great spirit. Wakin Tanka supports the rights of indigenous nations to live free and to take whatever actions are needed for sovereignty. We want international recognition according to the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights, which was affirmed, as well as the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We were once a free people and returned to our free status, which was also affirmed by the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights and the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Our struggles began with the doctrine of discovery, that infamous papal bull, the U.S. fantasy history. The doctrine which began the invading, encroaching, stealing, and occupying of our land, the murdering of our people, their displacement, and extermination. That is how today's America was created. In 1887, Congress passed the General Allotment Act, the Dawes Act, which ended our communal ownership of reservation lands. It distributed 160-acre allotments to individual Indians. But due to the reclassification, the identity theft of our people, we lost millions of acres. Wealthy ranchers exploit them today. U.S. authorities stole tribal lands and resources freely. They did so on the pretext of fulfilling federal responsibilities. Doing so abrogated fundamental indigenous rights unilaterally. Hundreds of treaties were violated. Our entire history reflects horrific struggles, denial of human rights, our God-given unalienable rights of life, liberty, and property. We note that soon after a treaty was issued, the American indigenous people were removed from their land. Those treaties were not signed by the indigenous people, but by someone acting on our behalf, such as the European chief John Ross of the Cherokee, or by the issuer themselves. We therefore terminate all treaties. Land restitution applicant and claimant must be female. According to ancestral customs and traditions, the return of land is to the maternal line. Land claims will only be honored going back through the maternal line. We demand compensation due to the practice method of supplanter and usurper for countless generations, all done under the guise of consent. Also, generational testing, usually done under the guise of prevention, such as in the 50s polio, and in the 30s syphilis, namely the infamous clinical study, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the U.S. Public Health Service on so-called African American, indigenous American men who thought they were receiving free health care from the U.S. government. According to Noah's Webster's Dictionary 1828, American is a noun, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals of copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. The American was later reclassified as Negro, Black, Colored, Mulatto, and African American, stolen identities. Native American is a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginal inhabitants that now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America, and especially to the citizens of the United States. Where is the home cradle of civilization of those that colonized our indigenous lands and now call themselves natives to the land? For the so-called Native American, it is not the United States. It is not America. We had an agreement with one another. I'm not going to get out of my canoe and get into your boat and try to steer it. And I'm not going to ask you to get out of your boat and into my canoe and try to steer it. We are going to allow one another to exist. In the beginning, we helped your people in their quest to be free from bondage on the land of the first people. We helped them establish their government, taught them how to cultivate the soil, build, and how to create agreements of peace and friendship. Independence was based on our autochthonous status to the land, which helped in their claim for independence and creation of government. We have our own way of life, and you have yours, and we are not trying to convince you to be us, nor do we want to be you. You wanted our help because you were fleeing for your lives. This was the sentiment of the original Americans towards the Europeans. However, things soon changed, and we saw firsthand what it was they had fled from. The colonists brought their European wars to North America, and their competition for land and its resources endless. This led to 100 years of war with the French and their indigenous American allies in the north, with the British and their indigenous American allies in the south. One moment we are traveling in our canoe down the river of life, traveling in a parallel line in their boat were those Europeans or Euro-Americans who are here on our land. And the next moment, we were being kidnapped, stolen, moved across the land, put into bondage, slavery in our own land, and told we were escaped slaves. Those people they tricked into indentured servitude. Once our people lived peacefully on their own land, the so-called white settlers changed things. Western civilization destroyed their way of life. There's nothing civilized about it. They're either ignored, mocked, or demonized in media, books, films, and society. They're called drunks, beasts, thugs, primitives, and savages. These colonists always were a white supremacist society. Immigrants and their descendants have become the rich, powerful elites who have been controlling the indigenous people, and most others don't matter. They are systematically used and abused. They are not served. It's the colonists' way. History fails to mention many slaves were pale in skin. Those that were tawny, coppered color, dark in skin, were prisoners of war. They killed our warriors, elders, even women and children. Those that survived were separated based on our varying copper-colored complexion. Mothers were separated from children who were used for the adventure of the colonists, rape, molestation, bait for animals, which led to the genocide of our people. Our land, inheritance, names were all stolen, and we were misidentified as Negro or colored, now misnomered Black or African America. Although those titles and labels were thrust upon us, many of our grandparents continued to fight for our inheritance and told many stories of our life before the colonist time. When many of the elders were growing up, it wasn't safe to be Indian. It was better to be thought of as Black or Negro. We often heard our parents say, "I'll be a Negro for nothing in this world." We were told to never talk about who we were or what we were. Our people were afraid. They thought that they would get hurt or be killed. So we just never talked about it much, especially away from home. But we knew who we were. We knew our people were. Talking about your inheritance or your connection to the land and rights was a dangerous topic that could cost you your life. This is one reason why we see pale-skinned people claiming American Indian or Native American ancestry. Many ran and took refuge in our clans. Unbeknownst to us, some were working on behalf of the colonists to steal our titles and land. That is why in 1831, the Cherokee versus Georgia, Justice Marshall ruled that the Cherokee Nation was not a foreign state as defined in the U.S. Constitution, and therefore they could not sue the state of Georgia in the Supreme Court from usurping the gold on their land. By this time, many tribes had been infiltrated. Original Cherokee were being designated something else, while the pale-skinned European claimed their heritage and land. Here is the rally against illegal aliens. The descendants of the colonists are still claiming to be who they are not. The state government did little to discourage them, ignoring federal treaties and even abetting the taking of Indian land through bribery, fraud, and coercion. When the tribes turned to Washington for redress, federal officials proved ineffectual or hostile, depending on the administration. One by one, the other southern tribes, such as the Chickasaws, the Choctaws, the Creeks, and the Seminoles, signed treaties that required them to uproot to the far side of the Mississippi River. Modern-day Native Americans do not know of their copper-colored, bushy-haired origins, but have accepted the claims of their oppressor as fact without any verification. Those living on federal land, reservations, are a product of this colonization and rape. It is a very sensitive topic, as many are unaware of their true history. The same is true of many original American Indians. Although they have the historical link, they too believe the lies of the colonists and not the truth of their soul. All of the above make our argument and declaration as a sovereign state ceded their independence to the United States. We have a long history as nations, a tradition which the U.S. recognized when it entered into treaty relationships with their governments. Instead, U.S. courts have declared Indians to be members of dependent nations who occupy their lands at the pleasure of Congress, a political body which may at any time elect to abrogate Native status altogether. The United States stole our land, killed and enslaved our people. They tried, and even today are trying to annihilate us. We stand firm and say no more. We take a stand to reclaim our land. We are the true autochthonous people of the land. Although they want to usurp our identity, their documents tell the truth. We will no longer identify ourselves by the names and labels given to us by the oppressor. We no longer identify ourselves as something that was created by the colonists. We've taken a very close look at our lineage. Tribes in historiography, ancient myth of autochthony in historiography is the belief of the historian or the tribe itself that they are indigenous, the first people to inhabit their possessed land. People who sprung from earth itself are the original inhabitants of a country as opposed to settlers. In 1988, Congress thanked the Iroquois Confederacy for helping them establish their trading post and constitution. And you can research that. It was in the Joint House Resolution 331, which was done by the 100th Congress. I won't read it because it's quite lengthy. The ancient remains being found throughout the Americas are a Negroid, not Mongoloid or Eurozoid people. The reason the UN and Congress don't seriously entertain Native American causes is because they are foreigners. The 15th century definition of native is person of servitude, which applies to them even today. Present interpretation of native is a person born here, but originates elsewhere. Both definitions apply to those on the reservations. These folks are descendants of Europeans and Asians, not from thousands of years ago, but fairly recent. They are foreigners, even if it was shown they arrived here 10,000 years ago. They can never be nothing more than an immigrant, a native, not divinely entitled to anything here. And to show you this is based in truth, Obama signed the UN Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, and that alone would give the supposed Native American teeth to quietly fight and win their land battles. Yet they don't go near that UN declaration. They know it doesn't apply to them, and that they can't have land that does not belong to them. Their purpose was to displace the true indigenous people in exchange for land to live on and monthly federal support. So yes, the summation that they're not a sovereign nation is correct. Only individuals can be sovereign, and the only individuals that can be are the autochthonous, also known as African Americans, because they originated here, no one else. That is why the Montana freemen were enduring so much hardship during their freemen on the land standing back in the day. It doesn't apply to them. Same can be said of the Native American. Any people labeling themselves as Native is placing themselves in the same boat as the fake Indians, which is why the people need to know who the original people are and call themselves accordingly. The illusions about who belongs and who doesn't are being dissolved daily. It is also stressed that the government would deal on behalf of the indigenous claimant any foreseeable problems that may arise from farmers having to return land. They must also provide protection for the reinstated landholders, as well as paving roads so that we will have easy return. They should install water, sewage, etc. The government will provide protection against harm that may come to the people returning to family land. We do not need permission to reclaim and take our lands, people. We will not fill out any forms. We are the original beings and do not need permission to be. We demand an Indigenous Land Corporation established by the federal government to assist the Indigenous Americans to acquire land and manage that held land sustainably and in a manner that provides cultural, social, economic, and environmental benefits for ourselves and future generations. The corporation to be funded by an annual payment from the investment returns of the American government's investment accounts. They have plenty of public trusts that were set up with our land. Sex and slave trafficking, human organ harvesting of the indigenous people on the land known as America must end. We therefore call for the immediate removal of all military, law enforcement officers, agents, personnel, police, sheriff, and fire departments. The misguided governance of leaders in many American inner cities has caused confusion among its citizens. Sadly, when these police officers fail to uphold their sworn positions in good standing, the progressive leaders and influencers support them in their error. This has transpired far too long. Therefore, we're the descendants of the original inheritors of the sovereign empire known as America, call for the removal of all present law enforcement personnel, police, sheriffs, fire department officers, and agents from the landmass known as America and the United States. The security of Israel, Isis, Ra, and El, the children of the sun, is an enforceable action under the laws of Mayat and must be upheld by nations, states, and countries. Also, through investigation, it has been determined the U.S. federal offices and local subsidiaries of Central Intelligence Agency, Federal Bureau of Investigation, National Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and many others have been responsible for countless murders and kidnapping. We must build a righteous world for all our people. It's shocking that the nation is so divided and people are demanding change to police culture while ignoring the incompetence of the elected officials who oversee them. We watch the cities run by progressive mayors and state officials who blatantly refuse to enforce common sense laws when it comes to police officers. It should infuriate everyone here in America that the progressive state and local officials allow men and women who have sworn to honor, never betray their badge, their integrity, character, or the public trust, that they are accountable for their actions. Yet so many of those who do not uphold this oath have been allowed to remain police force. No job in America would allow an employee to remain on duty under such circumstances, let alone a job as important as policing a diverse community. In concluding, I have more, and I'll conclude that we are the true autochthonous people of the land. Although they want to usurp our identity, their documents tell the truth. I prefer peace, but if trouble must come, let it come in my time. So that my children can live in peace. That's a quote from Tom Paine. To slaughter. Now is the time. Stand up and reclaim your land. The internet has research has made us partners.
All right. I made it back. StreamYard kicked me out, but that was the end of the show anyway. I just wanted to play the declaration. This is July 2nd, the American Aboriginal Day of Independence. All right. Peace.